Hey everyone, welcome back. You asked for it, so we're gonna do it. This is the long-awaited Knell Prime. In fact, it's a good thing I waited this long because there was a very pesky bug on this weapon until recently. I've been delaying covering Knell because I've been busy working on other videos as well as working on some special stuff for a stream you'll see in the future. In fact, we're on our partner push and nearly there, so if you want to support me, please make sure to follow on Twitch and feel free to stop by in chats. You'll be able to see me test my builds live, plan new videos, memes, and ask me anything you want. So, what's so special about the Knell Prime? It's got a massive upgrade over the vanilla, going from 20 to 40% base crit, and a 2.0 multiplier instead of 1.5, and base 10 status instead of 5. The base damage also got a fat boost from 150 to 180, but it is still very much not slash weighted. That's okay though, because it doesn't need to be. I'm sure you know about the Death Knell passive. It's the exact same as the regular Knell. Each time you land a headshot, you get one Death Knell stack. So long as you have a Death Knell stack, the Knell has infinite ammo. You can get up to 3 stacks and each stack decays 1 by 1 with a 2-second timer on each. So you can get up to 6 seconds of infinite ammo, though if you are leveling it, I would still recommend running Pistolier for the time being for more lenience, as it will give you an instant 12 seconds infinite ammo on a headshot kill. And Knell, being a raw damage pistol, is perfect for it. For normal use, it isn't really needed, but it still is an option. The big bonus from the Death Knell buff are the stats you get. Each stack gives 0.5 times more flats crit multiplier, for a max buff of 1.5 times more bonus. Once crit multipliers are in play, this may not seem as big as it seems, but you also get a flat 20% status per stack. Now this is massive and very useful on some builds I'll show you today. A flat 60% status chance is nothing to joke about, especially because the weapon only has 10% base, and with gun CO, we close in on 100. Another thing to know is punch through is mandatory on this weapon for optimal use. Why? Because Knell is a single target weapon. Punch through turns single target weapons into crown killers, but also because each headshot counts as a Death Knell stack. Punch through can let you hit multiple heads at once, which will trigger multiple stacks, and multi-shot also applies. This maximizes Death Knell's uptime both for DPS and quality of life. Also, if you haven't used Knell in a long time, you may remember its original iteration. I would strongly recommend picking it up because what you may not realize is that DE changed the infinite ammo mode to full auto a little over a year ago. It is no longer semi-auto like it was on release. This makes it much easier to use, and with the advent of weapon arcanes, can turn it into a laser beam. You can even land headshots with a hip fire, though I wouldn't always recommend this. It does work though, and headshots landed even while unscoped will still count towards Death Knell stacks. Alright, let's look at those Knell builds today. First one, a stock corrosive build, simple as you'd expect. Now, I would recommend equipping Arcane Velocity if you aren't equipping Pistolier, because that really opens up slots on the build, as you don't really need to worry about reloading much since the ammo is infinite. So being able to ignore both reload and fire rate is pog. This is also how you can slot a full build and still include punch through. So obviously, this first build is corrosive with pathogen and convulsion. The crit chance mod, Prime Pistol Gambit, comes down to preference. You can either opt for this for easy peasy crits with minimal effort, or, since the weapon relies on headshot anyways, can go for Galvanized Crosshairs, which maxes out the CC to 168% instead of 114.8, meaning you'll see mostly oranges. This is a raw damage build, so you will definitely be able to trigger the headshot kill requirements. Raw damage build also means we can equip secondary deadhead, which will both give us 30% more headshot damage and remove 50% of the weapon recoil, while also requiring only 3 headshot kills to max out the arcane stacks. They will also last super long, 24 seconds each for 360% more base damage. The ADS shot already has much less recoil than hipfire, and it is basically invisible with deadhead. Obviously, we want Prime Target Cracker to scale in the crit damage. As a hit scan weapon, and because this is a rapid fire weapon which reaches 78% at max Death Knell, you will proc a boatload of status. Corrosive, Impact, and Puncture are basically guaranteed, which means 360% base damage from galvanized shots, plenty higher than Hornet Strike. Secret Like is set to hit crowds and instantly max out Death Knell, Galvanized Multi-Shot, and the Prime Bane. As this is a raw damage build, the Prime Bane only dips once for 55% more total damage, so you can drop this if you want, whether for another crit chance mod or Prime Heated Charge, although Bane will still be best in slot. As it is a raw damage build, and Knell is absolutely ridiculous, most of the time Prime Heated Charge won't see much benefit, since Corrosive already both has 75% more damage against Ferrite armor, ignores 75% of Ferrite armor in damage calculations, and also reduces armor by up to 80%, which will be extremely common on such a high fire rate weapon. Heat does none of this, except reduce armor up to 50%, and requires the enemy to live for 1 second before it even starts reducing armor at all, which probably won't happen outside of endurance with the Knell. How it handles? Pretty self-explanatory. It's a corrosive full auto. Just scope in, land your first few headshots, and then either keep aiming, or just de-aim and hold down mouse 1. You can literally just spray down enemies however you want with it. If you don't want to worry about aiming at head so much, just bring and throw a Scourge. None of the mods on it matter, so all I would bring is Amalgam Serration to improve our sprint speed. When you throw this, it creates a 2 meter bullet attractor around all enemy heads for 20 seconds, in a 14 meter radius. No, you cannot increase the radius with Prime Firestorm. If you run over it, you can pick it up more easily. Honestly, I don't see it used as often in run and gun setups, but you can make the Knell a little more comfy with it. For campy setups though, it's lethal. Regardless of what you pick, it is pretty easy to keep the Death Knell stacks up, even more so on Steel Path for higher spawns and tank your enemies, meaning they can live a body shot until you line up the headshot when you refresh stacks. For the next build, this one is a little more specialized for maximum DPS if you really want something to die. This is the Mesa / Knell. If you haven't seen the video yet, there is a full explanation and mechanics breakdown on how Mesa / pistol DPS setups work, as well as the best weapons for it, which ironically also includes Ignis Wraith. But basically, Mesa's Shatter Shield Augment, Staggering Shield, can force proc impact on hit scan weapons with Zada's Whisper Void procs, and these impact procs will inherit weapon mods, including Hemorrhage or Internal Bleeding, which can turn those impact procs into slash, even on weapons that normally have no impact damage whatsoever, or can't slash properly. Normally, we would be limited by the magazine and have to reload, which can reset void procs as well and have enemies blocking. But because hit scan weapons will continue to hit what you use to create the void proc, setting up headshot procs will guarantee all shots after will be headshots. This will also ensure the void proc stays alive forever until the enemy dies, because the Knell has infinite ammo if you keep hitting headshots. Basically, this is lethal and super dangerous to Demolish so long as they have heads, and regular enemies as well, though some overkill. This interaction has infinite scaling, but void bubbles can get in the way of KPS, and slash takes 1 second to tick. But if you're going to disruption, this is definitely a top pick since you don't need to worry about ammo or magazine, and is actually strong enough to take out Demolish this way with the Knell while never having to reload during the burst phase. As a Demolish killer, I wouldn't recommend running Galvanized Crosshair since enemies aren't always around to stack when you go to take out the Demolish. All your damage will come from slash, so you don't need to worry about elements. You could mod Viral since the IPS doesn't matter as we have Force Impact, but it's up to you, and you will be losing the raw base damage scaling if you do so. That does require 2 mods, and we use 1 extra mod slot compared to the extra build to slot Hemorrhage. The other slot has been filled with Anemic Agility, but you can really fit whatever you need. If you really want to fit Viral on, I would recommend dropping Seeker and Anemic Agility for the 260/60 mods. As you're running Disruption, Seeker isn't as mandatory since the game mode focuses on DPS instead of KPS. Otherwise, you can prime with, say, a Ceto or Kuvacomb or even Scourge itself, since it has innate corrosive, meaning you can proc viral, radiation, and cold, as well as that corrosive, which will be useful for priming normal enemies. And now we'll give you the IPS for galvanized shot scaling. That's essentially 7 different status effects for 720 or 840% base damage, and because we're going with slash DPS, secondary merciless, slash can't get headshot kills, and that's going to be the most of your kills endurance, so yeah. How does it handle? Well, it shreds, as expected. These corrupted heavy gunners just can't put up a fight at all. I'm gonna have to use Drake Harmonic Bombard so you can see the slash ticks properly. To emphasize how very little damage, well, it's still lots, but how little a single shot from Knell can end up doing so much more damage when you let the slash tick. Remember, this is the reason it's killing Demless on the setup and also the reason why we slot primed Expel, because it double dips on these bleeds for 2.4 times more damage. This is a disruption focused build, I would say, because the Void Bubble from Mesa can really get in the way of KPS, while Mesa is a superb fix for old lost weapons that no longer feel viable on Steel Path by giving them slash procs. More meta viable options that never really had issues killing enemies to start with don't benefit as much. So how about we look at an interesting third final build. This is a pure electric Knell. Why electric? Because we get 78% status at max Death Knell stacks. The weapon has ridiculous firepower, and on this particular build it actually reaches 84% status alongside that super high fire rate. Electricity chains across all enemies and massively increases damage output while also being able to proc headshots and headshot kills. This means you get both chaining damage and headshot multipliers on the dots and can also use Deadhead for longer lasting stacks. Bonus headshot multipliers and reduced recoil like the corrosive build. This means it heavily favors grouping setups. So while I would only really use this with Larva, Airburst, or Ensnare, the Knell is still strong enough to work without them, but the real reason to use Electric is for grouping. Punch Through not only builds Death Knell faster and hits more enemies here, but it also serves to proc Electric on as many enemies at once, massively inflating the AoE potential. Electric Knell is so strong it kinda feels like completely busted and broken Comrex when you group enemies. The only difference between Corrosive and Electric Knell is running a 60-60 electric mod here instead of pathogen rounds. But the damage ceiling and grouping is just so much higher. This is a KPS oriented setup for Steel Path survival. And electric procs can easily chain and get a headshot kill, so we're going Galvanized Crosshairs. For that sweet 168% crit chance, you'll get as many status effects as the Corrosive setup, so Galvanized Shot will pop off. And because electric dots will be our main DPS, the primed Expel will also double dip on the chaining dots for 2.4 times more damage. We'll also really want grouping here, like I said, but if you do run it on Harrow, while you may not necessarily subsume grouping on since we have Condemn to hold enemies in place, Magus Anomaly works, and Condemn also makes headshots super easy to pull off if you aren't bringing Scourge. So let's see if the Corrupted Heavy Gunners can live in Ensnare Knell. Oops. Instant death. Want to see it again? It was too fast, right? Literally 1 second and all 20 of them are dead. And there we go again. The might of Electric Knell is just absolutely cracked, and even this test against Drake Armanic Bombards next, instead as well, they barely last longer. Electric Knell is definitely one of my favorites, and I feel it is extremely satisfying to use. The free headshot chaining also means it can even build Death Knell stacks when you aren't trying to, since the electric dots are so large. In basic Steel Path missions, everything gets shredded instantly on hit because the damage is just too high. Realistically, while it may have issues with level cap on electric, this one should be able to scale up to 1000 to 2000 quite easily on the levels, especially with infinite ammo, full auto spray once you get them ensnared. And there you go, 3 awesome, deadly, and unique Knell builds, each one different, special, optimal scenarios and performance. The Cross is set up for just basic, all-purpose, all-around use that will work anywhere and everywhere on Steel Path. Their Hemorrhage slash build for interesting disruption strats on Mesa with infinite scaling, and Electric Knell for alternative Steel Path grouping setup that has insane and ridiculous KPS potential. You just can't say no to guaranteed status procs and ridiculously high crit chance and buffed crit multipliers. Remember, if you want even more leeway than Death Knell buff, you can always use Pistolier for 12 seconds infinite ammo instead of 6, and only requires a single headshot kill. If this is your first time watching, feel free to leave a like or, better yet, subscribe. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments. 79.5% of you are not subscribed. I'm trying my best to get you new information out always as soon as possible, like I've done with covering all this new war stuff. Stick around if you want to see interesting memes and builds on a nearly daily basis. You don't want to miss out on any of that, do you? That'll be it for this video. Thank you all for watching, and see you all next time.